We've been trained to believe that anything old is primitive, that medieval farming was crude, inefficient, and barely enough to keep people alive. That modern agriculture saved us. But what if that story is backwards? What if medieval farmers weren't struggling at all, but quietly growing crops so resilient, so self-sustaining, that they make modern industrial farming look fragile by comparison? Because here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to talk about. For thousands of years, people grew grain without seed contracts, without fertilizers shipped across continents, without chemicals, without debt. And somehow, they ate. Not only that, they survived droughts, wars, plagues, collapsing empires, and ruined supply chains, all without the systems we're told are essential today. In this video, you'll discover 10 medieval supergrains that modern agriculture quietly pushed aside. Not because they didn't work, but because they worked too well. Grains that reseeded themselves, grains that thrived in bad soil, grains that refused to stay dependent. And by the end, you'll understand why no one wants you thinking about them anymore. Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever planted seeds from store-bought grain and watched them fail the next year? Have you ever noticed how farmers must buy new seed every season, no matter how healthy last year's crop looked? That isn't bad luck. That's design. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's begin. Number 1. Einkorn, the grain that refused to change. Walk through a modern wheat field and you'll see uniformity. Short plants, heavy heads, perfect rows. Looks efficient. Until the fertilizer stops coming. Einkorn is different. Einkorn is believed to be the oldest cultivated wheat on Earth, grown over 5,000 years ago. And unlike modern wheat, it never learned how to depend. It grows tall. It survives poor soil. It needs far less nitrogen than modern wheat varieties. And here's the part that makes it dangerous. Einkorn naturally drops part of its seed back into the ground at harvest, meaning it can come back the following year without being replanted. Medieval farmers understood this instinctively. Plant once, harvest carefully. Let nature finish the job. Modern agriculture hates that, because einkorn doesn't need precision fertilizers. It doesn't respond well to chemical pushing. And it doesn't produce the kind of uniform yield corporations prefer. Lower output per acre, higher independence per farmer. And that's a trade modern systems refuse to make. Number 2. Emmer, the grain that survived empires. Long before supermarkets, empires rose and fell on emmer wheat. Ancient Egypt lived on it. Rome relied on it. Medieval Europe kept it alive for one simple reason. When other grains failed, emmer didn't. It tolerated drought. It resisted disease. It competed against weeds without herbicides. Its seed heads stayed intact during harvest, while still allowing natural reseeding from scattered grain. That balance mattered. Emmer didn't need fungicides. It didn't need genetic tweaking. It carried resistance in its bloodline. Modern wheat lost that. Not because it was bad, but because it didn't fit the new system. Emmer doesn't scale cleanly. It doesn't maximize profit per hectare. And it doesn't break farmers into dependence. So it disappeared quietly. Number 3. Spelt, the grain that protected itself. Spelt looks like wheat, behaves like wheat, but hides its strength. Its grain is wrapped in a tough outer hull, nature's armor. That hull protects it from insects, mold, and spoilage, which meant medieval granaries didn't need pesticides or climate control. Spelt stored safely for years. Modern wheat lost that protection to make processing faster, and in doing so, it became fragile. Spelt also survived colder climates, poorer soils, and rougher handling. It didn't panic under stress. People who ate spelt for generations didn't complain about modern digestive issues, because those problems hadn't been bred in yet. Spelt didn't quit. The system quit spelt. Number 4. Rye, the grain that wouldn't obey. If there is one grain modern agriculture truly hates, it's rye. Rye grows feral. It recedes aggressively. It refuses to stay contained. Even today, rye escapes fields and grows wild along roadsides, villages, and abandoned land. For medieval farmers in Northern Europe, rye meant survival. Cold weather, poor soil, short seasons, rye didn't care. Harvested imperfectly, and it came back stronger. Modern combines are designed to eliminate that possibility, harvesting every last seed, forcing farmers to buy again next year. Rye threatens that cycle. That's why it's treated like a nuisance instead of a staple. Number 5. Barley, the grain that built civilizations. Barley fed ancient armies. Barley sustained workers. Barley survived salty soil where wheat failed. In Mesopotamia, when irrigation ruined wheat fields, barley remained. That same salinization is happening today, on millions of acres. Modern wheat fails there. Barley still grows. Medieval barley wasn't animal feed. It was human food, dense, reliable, forgiving. And like rye, barley could reseed itself when harvested traditionally. Plant once, harvest carefully, repeat for generations. Number 6. Oats, the quiet survivor. Oats don't demand praise. They grow in cold, wet climates. They tolerate neglect. They thrive where others struggle. Medieval farmers used oats as both food and insurance. If wheat failed, oats remained. They didn't spike blood sugar. They delivered steady energy. Modern processing stripped oats down into a commodity, but the grain itself never lost its strength. Number 7. Khorasan, the grain modern baking can't control. Khorasan wheat, often sold under trademarked names, is ancient. Large kernels, high protein, strong flavor. It doesn't respond well to heavy nitrogen fertilizer, which makes it unattractive to industrial systems. But nutritionally, it outperforms modern wheat repeatedly. That's why it survives on the edges, never fully allowed back in. Number 8. Millet, the grain that doesn't ask permission. Millet grows fast, needs little water, and thrives where nothing else will. It fed medieval populations across Asia and Africa quietly, without drama. Millet doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It adapts. Modern agriculture prefers crops that obey schedules. Millet doesn't. Number 9. Sorghum, the drought grain. Sorghum tolerates heat, drought, and poor soil better than almost any grain. Medieval farmers used it as insurance against famine. Today, it's sidelined. Why? Because resilient crops don't sell dependency. Number 10. Perennial grains, the line they don't want crossed. Here's the future that terrifies the system. Grains that don't need replanting. Scientists have been working quietly on perennial grains, plants that return year after year without seed purchase. Deeper roots, better soil, less erosion, less fertilizer, and no annual seed market. Medieval farmers practiced early versions of this by encouraging volunteer crops, plants that reseeded naturally. They didn't call it innovation. They called it common sense. The truth that ties it all together. Medieval farmers didn't farm for profit margins. They farmed for survival. They chose grains that worked with nature, not against it. We traded that resilience for yield. We traded independence for convenience. We traded self-sustaining systems for fragile abundance. The question isn't whether medieval grains were inferior. The evidence says they weren't. The real question is whether you're willing to remember what was deliberately forgotten. Because real food doesn't need permission. It doesn't need contracts, and it doesn't need to kneel. If this made you think differently, subscribe. If it unsettled you, good. That means it worked.